Hello guys and gals, lords and ladies, saints and sinners of every kind. Welcome to Rise Up Jerusalem, your Catholic podcast for teens. I'm your host, Connor McLaughlin, and like promised last week, this week we get to talk about the 5 proofs of God's existence. Thomas Aquinas' 5 proofs of God's existence. They're really, really interesting. They may be a bit deep for some, but I think that everybody can handle it who's listening to this podcast. It's not like 6-year-olds are going to be handling it, because everyone else who, is over the age of 6 is going to be able to understand these. Well, last week when I talked about God's not dead, I mentioned how if the main character had just used these proofs, the whole movie would have gone quicker. And that not only would have made our viewing timing of the movie shorter, but it would have just made it easier, because Thomas Aquinas' 5 proofs are all based on logic. Nothing is used on the idea of any religion or anything like that. It's just logic. It's human reasoning to determine it. So quickly, if you don't know who Thomas Aquinas is, he was a 13th century philosopher and theologian. He's most famous for the Summa Theologica, which, if you listen to the show, you know that I absolutely love. And he really put these all in the beginning of the Summa Theologica, basically asking, does God exist? And then answering it with his now famous 5 proofs. So the first of these proofs is motion. This is what St. Thomas calls the most obvious of the 5 ways. So the idea of motion is saying that we can move something, like saying we can move a chair or move a pillow. I don't know, moving anything really. But St. Thomas asks, what does it mean to move something? So the dictionary defines motion as an act, process, or instance of changing place, an active or functioning state or condition. But St. Thomas says that it's the reduction of something to potency to act. So what this means is that motion occurs when possibility becomes a reality. Potency is the ability for something to have a condition, like being hot or being cold, or lying down or sitting, any certain position like that. And the potential of it becomes actual when said potential is filled. Thomas Aquinas has this amazing example of heat. In his example, wood has the potential to be hot. And motion occurs when the wood changes from maybe can becoming hot to actually becoming hot in reality. And for that to happen, something that is already hot must give heat to the wood. And of course, we know that's what happens. You take a match, snap it right onto a log, and it won't go, and you have to keep trying and trying. But eventually, that wood will become heat. That wood will generate heat. So does this idea that what is moved has to be moved by another deer always true? In other words, is it possible for things to be able to move itself? That obviously violates the idea of Newton's law of motion, that everything, at rest until acted upon by an exterior force. So by that notion, for something to move, something else has to move it. So basically what St. Thomas is saying here is that, and this is one of the most popular really among the proofs of God's existence, is the first mover, in other words, or some people call it the Big Banger. I know Father Michael Schmitz makes the example of that if you have a massive amount of paper clips, will there be a paperclip that's holding on? Will there be a first paperclip? And by definition, yes. And in the same way, just like the heat, there has to be something else. And so by definition, there has to be something first that's starting it. So in that instance, then there has to be something, let's say that the Big Bang actually occurred. This is a really big misnomer among Catholics, that we can't believe in the Big Bang. Actually, a Catholic priest coined the idea of the Big Bang. But with the idea of the Big Bang, it has the idea that, something can't move itself, so something has to start it. Thus, there has to be some sort of exterior being. You have to have an unmoved mover, in a way. You have to have something that starts the motion that it itself had not had any motion to start it. By definition, an unmoved mover. And so in this instance, then, God is the unmoved mover. And that could be a method with which people can say, logically, I didn't use a single thing of religion. Logically, the universe could be created by God. Logically, scientifically. Let's use the Big Bang and say that it works. But in the beginning, God started the Big Bang. Okay, that's Thomas Aquinas' first way, motion. Second way is efficient cause. Efficient cause is really similar to the motion cause, but whereas the motion cause just says, there has to be an unmoved mover, the efficient cause says that you have to have something prior to the original whatever happens that has been there. So for example, let's say you were created by your parents, and your parents were created by their parents, and their parents were created by their parents. So that goes back to the Father Michael Schmitz example. That top is going to be God. All the paper clips are going to be you, your parents, their parents, their parents, their parents, their parents, their parents, until you get to the top, which is God. So it's saying, okay, so there has to be a first cause. So the difference between this and the motion one is that the motion one says that for something to have moved, it had to have already, it had to have something else moving it. And thus you have to have something that nothing else could have been moving it. This is making it even more clear. It's saying that you have to have a first cause, first, second, third, and fourth cause. So in that, you have to have something that in itself was not created, because if it was created, it would just be another thing. For example, if I said that my great-grandparents were the uncaused cause, could I point out who they were caused by? Yes, their parents. But with God, you don't have anyone who created God. God is God. He is, as we believe, from all time, all being. He has been throughout the ages. He has lived forever. So logically, there has to be some sort of a first cause, and let's just say it was God. It makes sense. So that's the second way, efficient cause. So the third way is possibility and necessity. So this one is really trying to get out the fact that, well, there had to have been nothing at one time. And since nothing comes from nothing, there had to have been something to make everything. And yes, that sounds like an awful tongue twister, and it really doesn't make much sense. But to go into it, it's kind of like the idea of where Shakespeare says, to be or not to be, Everything has the potential of both being and non-being. So let's say that you have a 1,000,001 dice. It has the potential to be rolling up on a 1. It has the potential to roll up on 100,586. It has the potential for everything. But at the same time, it has a possibility to not be. So if everything has the potential to not exist, but then the universe never began, the potential for everything to not exist was never actually realized. But it had to have been realized because something is something now. So in that, everything has the potential to not exist, then nothing had to have been in existence at one point. Because you have the potential for non-existence, then yeah, something was not going to be up. If I roll that 1,000,001 die again, do I have the potential to not be a 1? More than likely. If I roll a 1, I got really lucky, and I am not that lucky. So everything has the potential for non-being. So what you have is the idea that there was nothing at some point. So that's the third way. So the fourth way is degrees of perfection. Now this is the one that is used to refute relativism. And if you don't know what moral relativism is, trust me, I'll be covering it soon. But not too soon, because I have the next 4 weeks planned out. It's going to be great. We are going to have fun. Or maybe soon, depending on how much I want to talk about moral relativism. Quickly though, moral relativism is the idea that nothing is true, and not in the Assassin's Creed, nothing is true, all is permitted sort of a way, but it's just the idea that there is nothing that can be wrong or nothing that can be right. Everything is relative to the specific time and person and everything. So in that instance, nothing can be true. But this is one is probably the most simple to see as wrong because I said what I just said it. This one can be viewed as wrong. Because of that, we have the ability to see something is right and if something is wrong. So let's say you're taking a test and the teacher says, oh, your test answer is wrong. By the definitions of relativism, they would say, oh, well, it's not really wrong, it's just my answer. And that's not wrong. Whereas that doesn't make any sense. Something is either right or something is wrong. And so by that definition, we have to have some sort of a yardstick with which we're judging things so that we can have something that's right, something is wrong. Or, the easiest way to think about it is if we have colors, we can say that colors are brighter and darker. And let's say black and white at two ends of the spectrum. You have perfect white and perfect black. And then there's the stuff in between. So how can we say that something is more white or more black? By definition, then there has to be a standard to meet that. That means that the idea of right and wrong or one side or another, or that bacon is better than ham, or that the Patriots are an awful football team have to come from somewhere. And so by definition, they have to come from something outside of us. And since every human has this, then maybe it comes from a god. So that's the fourth way, degrees of perfection. So the final way is intelligent design. And this one really deals with the idea of a design and order in the universe. So in this, it's saying that there are ordered rules that really, can't be broken. It's something that is true. So let's take the law of gravity. We're not going to say that the law of gravity can necessarily be broken by ourselves. It's a law that, okay, sure, maybe with airplanes, we have defied the law of gravity in some way, but I'm saying by ourselves. If we were just us with nothing, then would we be able to defy the law of gravity? No, of course we couldn't. So there has to be some sort of nature in that. Everything is going to work together and it's all going to fit. Same as in the laws of chemistry, when everything is going to fit together, well, then there has to be something that has fitted it properly, something that fit everything together, someone who put the puzzle together. And like we had earlier, well, okay, there had to have been someone who doesn't have to abide by those rules. And by definition, that means some sort of an other being, i.e., a god. So I hope that makes sense to all of you. I know it was a little bit of weird babbling stuff, but it's Thomas Aquinas' 5 proofs. It's not rocket science. Rocket science is much more complicated. Trust me, I know. I'm kidding. I don't know anything about rocket science. Anyways, watch out this Saturday. I will be coming out with something absolutely amazing this Saturday. You don't want to miss it. It will be there. Trust me, it'll be there. Saturday morning, I'll be coming out with... I'm not even going to tell you. It's just going to be awesome, and you have to watch it and tell all your friends and share it. And that brings me to my awesome segue of tell your friends. Tell them to watch Rise Up Jerusalem, or just watch just one issue to deal with my craziness for about, 8 to 10 minutes? It's not that hard to deal with my craziness for that long. Ask any of my friends. They put up with me more than I should. I'm sorry, friends. Anyways, this is Rise Up Jerusalem. I'm Connor McLaughlin. Rise up and live.